has been in the news this whole week. You might have heard about it on social media. It is the case of Cyntoia Brown.
Right.
Now, she was a 16-year-old girl who was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison for shooting a 43-year-old. Now, this case has been in the news recently because different celebrities, including Rihanna, Kim Kardashian, they brought to attention of what's been happening to this young girl. And I want to talk about this case because it really is shocking when you hear about it. So I want to talk about it with you, Stephanie. You know a lot. You've been studying this case. You've been researching about it. What's the story about? What's the background of this case?
Well, what we have here is we had Cyntoia, who was 15 years old at the time. This is back in 2004. She was 15 years old. She was a runaway, and she was living with this individual by the name of Cutthroat. So I'm giving you a little bit of some background information so that you can really get the details as to what happened here. So she was living with an individual by the name of Cutthroat who would force her to have sex with himself and his friends against her will. She had she has told us, or she has told individuals, that she had received threats that if she did not go out and prostitute, that she would be kicked out, or he would come after her family. And so on a day back in 2004, she went out and attempted to, we'll say, exchange sex for money. So she was at a local Sonic where she was in Tennessee, where she met up with an individual by the name of Johnny Allen. Johnny Allen was 43 years old at the time. He solicited her, and they both went back to his home. When they went back to his home, she stated that they ate and then they had sexual intercourse, and afterwards they were having some conversations. She stated that he told her that he was previously in the military, that there were guns everywhere that she could see, and at a certain point he leaned over in the bed. Now these are her allegations, that he leaned over across the bed, and she thought that he was going to get a gun, and it was at that point that she reached for a gun in her purse and shot him in the head. Now, of course, the prosecution's stance in this case is totally different. They were of the opinion, or they are of the opinion, excuse me, that she attempted to steal from him. That and there are facts that are corroborate this, due to the fact that she took some money from his wallet, she took his pants, and she ran away from the scene.
Did she take some of his guns too?
I believe you are correct. She did take some of his guns as well and left his home. So there are a lot of factors to consider, but part of the reason why that this is making such a huge case here right now, and this at this point right now, is due to the fact that a lot of celebrities we see are trying to make a stance for criminal justice reform. And so we have celebrities that are looking at the situation right now, one being the fact that she was actually a juvenile at the time that this was committed, but she was tried as an adult. And so one being her being a juvenile and tried as an adult, and two, the fact that they did not take into consideration a lot of her history when looking into this case.
Let's break that down a little bit. Okay, so she was a young girl. She was charged as a prostitute.
Yes.
Okay, so she was convicted as for prostitution, but there was a change in the law.
Absolutely.
The law has changed since then, and if the law had been what it is now, she might have had a different result, possibly?
Absolutely. There may have been possibly a different result, because as a result of her case and individuals advocating on her behalf, and a documentary that was later aired, the laws changed in Tennessee, where now individuals who are under the age of 18, they're not considered prostitutes, or they would not be charged with prostituting. They would be considered victims of sex trafficking. And so that would definitely make a difference in her case at this time.
Now, she feels that that her attorneys perhaps did not put the best case forward for her, because the circumstances surrounding her upbringing, she was a runaway.
Right.
She even said that she was used to people beating her, choking her, having guns pointed at her.
Right.
She entered into the room of a strange man, a 43-year-old. He had guns. It seemed that she was trying to move away from his advances, or there was something that made it uneasy.
Right.
But she said that there were certain factors that weren't taken into account, including all of her upbringing and all of the circumstances, but also she had a disorder. correct, from her mother during pregnancy. Please elaborate on that.
Right. So her mother was also a young mother. Her mother had her, I believe, when she was 16 herself. Her mother has stated that while she was pregnant with her, she continued to use drugs. She continued to abuse alcohol as well. And so it was later determined that Cyntoia was diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome. And so that could ultimately affect her mannerism, her behavior, and affect her mentally as well. And so she was claiming that that was not taken into consideration. In addition, her history was not taken into consideration as well. Cyntoia was ultimately adopted by another family, but prior to that, it was never displayed the fact that her mother had abused drugs while she was being raised, while raising Cyntoia. Her mother took alcohol while she was pregnant with her, took drugs while she was pregnant with her, that there was a history of suicide in the family, that even leading back to her grandmother. Her grandmother was also a victim of rape. As a matter of fact, that's how her grandmother became pregnant with Cyntoia's mother by the name of Georgina. So there are a lot of things or a lot of factors that should have been taken into consideration in this case, especially due to the fact that she was so young. And we know the Supreme Court has stated that a child that young, their brain has not mentally developed fully yet, and so that was not taken into consideration.
And top of this neurological disorder,
correct,
neurodevelopment disorder. So didn't she appeal this and it was unsuccessful? Didn't she claim that the prison sentence was unconstitutional? Didn't she claim that it was an ineffective assistance of counsel, that her attorneys didn't represent her properly, and the criminal court, the appeals court said no, they upheld her conviction? She tried to file for post-conviction relief, but it didn't work. They said your attorneys did properly represent you, and this isn't unconstitutional because she will technically be up for parole when she's almost 70 years old, when she's 67, but that's the law in Tennessee. So can you help explain a little bit about why is she unsuccessful in these appeals?
Well, she's unsuccessful in these appeals because of the fact that her attorneys accurately or provided the best representation for her that they could. She was a juvenile at the time. They attempted through hearings to have her tried as a juvenile and not as an adult, but the judge is the one who made the decision that she would be tried as an adult. And so the ineffective assistance of counsel probably would not work. And you're correct, the law is the law. She was tried as an adult, and even though she was tried as an adult, in Tennessee, as you stated, if a juvenile is found guilty of first-degree murder, meaning that the murder was premeditated, then they would have to serve the minimum. And so now she won't be out until she's 69 or 70 years old.
So this case has definitely been getting a lot of attention, and there's been documentaries, and as we said, social media, people on social media are writing about it. I want to show you a short excerpt from a documentary profiling Cyntoia Brown, and we'll be back here to talk about what are the next steps for her and what can she eventually be released from prison. Let's take a look.
I knew it was very, I don't know, it's a lot of people go there and prostitute.
Okay. And how were you going to get there?
I was going to get a ride from someone.
When you walked up to the Sonic, who approached you?
A man in a white truck.
And is this the person that has been referred to throughout this hearing, Mr. Allen?
Yes. The question came up, was I up for any action? And the action, I guess you should know that it was insinuating sexual. He asked me how much, and I told him 200. And he said no, 100. And we decided finally on 150.
Who made the suggestion of going to his house?
He did. I had actually suggested the hotel we was right there at, but he didn't want to go to the hotel. He said that he wanted to go to his house because there was no one there.
Did he tell you who he lived with or anything like that?
He said he lived by himself. That time he was just finished telling me about his accomplishments and saying how that he used to be in the Army, and because I mentioned that I was from Fort Campbell. And so he related to how he was also in the Army before, and that he was a sharpshooter in the Army. And then he had told me how a lot of women want him for his money, and that he wanted someone to make love with him with desire.
Okay. Did you see any guns in the house?
Yes, I seen 2 shotguns downstairs, and he showed me a chrome gun with a black handle.
Where were you when he showed you that?
I was sitting at the table eating my food.
You tend to be a nervous person.
Yeah.
Was there anything that made you especially nervous that night?
Just how he was acting. just how he talked. It's like the way he talked, how he was just so important and stuff. And then me, I look at myself, who am I? Who am I to him? It's like, then he talks about the guns and stuff. If he does something to me, I'm sitting here thinking, what can I do? I'm in his house. Ain't nobody gonna know where I'm at. My mom and them, they don't know where I'm at. The people that I stay with, Chick on them, they don't know where I'm at. Nobody's gonna know what happens to me. He doesn't care. He doesn't even know who I left with. And all this is just running through my mind, and I'm just a nervous wreck.
Mr. Allen was asleep and facing away from you when you shot him.
No, sir.
All right. What I want you to do is to explain to the court how you have a gun in your purse on the nightstand, correct?
Right.
You don't want to do this. You don't want to be here. So you felt like if you tried to leave, he would harm you.
Right.
And your belief in that is based on the fact that he told you he had some guns and he's a sharpshooter.
Not only that, but the way
also,
he was acting.
Well, all I know about his activities is what you've told us, and that's really all we'll ever know, Ms. Brown.
Right.
Since you killed him, the only thing we know is that he took you to Sonic. He bought you food. He took you home. You used his bathroom. You felt comfortable doing that. You ate with him. You felt comfortable doing that. You sat on the couch and watched TV with him. You felt comfortable doing that. You got in the bed and at least one time went to sleep while he was there. You felt comfortable doing that.
I never went to sleep.
What happened next?
At first he was just stroking me, but then it's like he just grabbed me like in between my legs, like he just grabbed it real hard, and he just gave me this look. It was like a very fierce look, and then it just sent these chills up my spine. I'm thinking he's gonna hit me or do something like that, but then he rolls over and reaches, like he's reaching to the side of the bed or something, so I'm thinking, no, he's not finna hit me, he's finna get a gun.
And what did you do at that time?
I just grabbed the gun and I shot him.
How did you become involved with the case of Cyntoia Brown?
You contacted me and you asked me if I could do a pre-trial forensic.
Welcome back to the Law and Crime Network, everybody. This is Jesse Weber. I'm joined by Stephanie Willis, co-host for the day. Great co-host. We're following the Cyntoia Brown case, and that was an excerpt from a documentary profiling her case. And so the important thing to note from that part of the excerpt is the DA is really going after her about that self-defense claim. And Stephanie, I want to talk to you about this. There's a discrepancy about whether Mr. Allen was sleeping when she shot him. What kind of threat did she feel? Was he actually reaching for a gun? We know that she spent time with him, as was said in the documentary. She went to get food with him. She used his bathroom. She was watching TV. She felt comfortable. So the idea that it's a self-defense claim maybe didn't seem so credible. What did you make of that?
Well, I think that we're only seeing a portion of the clip here. And so I think that it needs to be taken into consideration the fact that she stated that during the time that she was with him, he kept talking about the fact that he was in the military and that he was a sharpshooter and that he had guns everywhere in the home. So in looking at her history or in detailing her history, she had been around individuals who had threatened her before, even put a gun to her head as a result of not complying with their advances sexually. So it could be reasonable at that time for her to have been in a place to be fearful, even though, yes, she did go to his home. Yes, she did. She sat down and they had dinner or Sonic, whatever it was that they had. But I think that it is plausible that at a certain period of time, she could have felt in fear of her life. And so we have individuals who claim self-defense all the time. And I guess it's dependent upon the jury as to whether or not they believe their claims. So
let's talk about what her next steps are, because she was denied an appeal for post-conviction relief. Now there's this huge movement to get her released. Is the move to see if she gets clemency? I mean, she's up for parole when she's almost 70 years old, but is the move to get the governor to grant her clemency? I know there might be a petition that's being signed.
Yes.
Celebrities are coming for her support. And let's not forget, she's been a model citizen in prison. She obtained an associate's degree from a university while in prison and has worked with the juvenile justice system. So maybe what are her next steps? What can she do?
Well, as far as her next steps, we do know that there's been a lot of push to see if something can be done on her behalf. I know that Kim Kardashian made a nice post and stating that it was a horrible situation.
Rihanna as well.
Rihanna, T.I., a lot of influential people, I should say, have made a significant push to see what can be done on her behalf. And you're correct. She has been a model inmate. Yeah. She recently obtained her associate's degree, and she's supposed to graduate, I believe, in 2017 with her bachelor's degree. And she does speak to other juveniles in the juvenile system. But in terms of her next step as to what can be done, I think that it would be clemency. I know that the celebrities now have made a huge push, especially because of what happened with Meek Mill and his probation.
Sure.
We know that there was such an uproar regarding what happened that now he has a rehearing for his probation. So I think that they're hoping, because there's such a huge push from not only celebrities, influential individuals, activists, that there can be something can be done on her behalf.
So I know there's a petition on moveon.org
Yes.
that has been set up to bring attention to this case. So
Yes.
far, more than 100,000 signatures have been collected. The petition asks for mercy and compassion, but also, aren't legislators hoping to pass a bill that would give teens who are sentenced to life a second chance? The law would allow for a review of their sentence after 15 or 20 years. Now, she is 29 years old right
Yes.
now, which is possible she could get a review. They're having trouble passing this bill,
Yes.
for whatever reason that might be. But if they're able to pass this bill in Tennessee where teen lifers can get a second chance on a review of their case after 15 or 20 years, and maybe she could get out sooner than possible, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this new law and this petition and these next steps?
Well, I do know that they once previously tried to bring this bill, but it failed. And once it failed, they decided to bring it back and to reevaluate it once more to see if they can bring it back forward again. But I think that it would be great. However, what would be most important is that the bill would be retroactive to her, because we know in the case, or in this, as a result of this case, that Tennessee laws were passed in which victims of sex trafficking, or minors, I should say, of sex, which are victims of sex trafficking, they were. Individuals who are prostituting are now considered victims of sex trafficking, but it did not apply to her. So it would be very important that if this bill does pass, which we hope that it does, because minors, I should say that it was a horrible crime. She admits that she did kill somebody, and she should serve time for killing somebody, but she was a minor at the time, and so she should have the opportunity to be rehabilitated. And if she is rehabilitated, then maybe some sort of an opportunity to be let out.
Well, it's a fascinating case. There's definitely a lot of developments with it, and we'll make sure to follow it as soon as we know more or something happens. I mean, you have to imagine, with all this attention coming forward now, there will be something in the news about it, some new developments. We saw it with the Brendan Dassey and Making a Murderer.
Right.
I mean, there was so much attention brought onto that case. And